Zork is easy to remember and strangely difficult to explain. He appears near the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a gigantic demon, walks through ancient Egypt, defeats creatures that spent the entire series being treated as gods, and announces that he wants to cover the world in darkness. After villains such as Pegasus, Merrick, and Darts receive full arcs of manipulation, pain, and personal history, Zork can seem almost basic. He is huge, evil, and very committed to destroying things. That first impression misses his actual role. Zork is the answer to a question Yu-Gi-Oh! Had been carrying since Yugi completed the Millennium Puzzle. Why were the Millennium items created? Why did these sacred objects hold so much cruelty? Why was the pharaoh forced to erase his own name and trap his soul for thousands of years? Why had Bakura's Millennium Ring carried an evil spirit through every major stage of the story? All of those roads lead to Zork. His story begins with an act that saved Egypt and poisoned its future. His power grows from human fear, resentment, and ambition. His return forces Atum to confront the crime buried underneath his kingdom, while his defeat explains why Yugi's friendship was essential to the pharaoh long before the ceremonial duel. Zork has a simple personality because his purpose is larger than personality. He is the darkness produced when people use other human beings as material, hide the cost, and call the result sacred. Long before Atum became pharaoh, Egypt was threatened by invading armies. His father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, wanted to protect the kingdom and lacked the power to defeat the enemy. His brother and chief priest, Akhenaten, discovered a ritual in the Millennium Tome that could create 7 objects of extraordinary magical power. Those became the Millennium Puzzle, Ring, Eye, Key, Scale, Necklace, and Rod. The promise was almost irresistible. Egypt could gain weapons strong enough to repel its enemies. The pharaoh approved the creation of the items without being told the full price. Akhenaten took soldiers to Kul Elna, a village known for thieves, and selected its population for sacrifice. In the anime, 99 villagers are killed and their souls are used in the ritual. The manga makes the process even more physical and horrifying. Human lives are reduced to ingredients for gold objects that will later be carried by priests and treated as symbols of divine authority. Akhenaten chooses Kul Elna because the residents can be described as criminals. The label makes the massacre easier to justify. A threatened kingdom decides that one village contains lives worth less than everyone else's safety. The ritual works. The Millennium items give the royal court enough power to defeat the invaders. Egypt survives. The decision therefore produces the exact evidence needed to defend it. Akhenaten can look at his kingdom and see people who remained alive because the items were created. Akhenaten can look at the defeated army and tell himself that he did what history required. Kul Elna becomes the missing part of that history. The dead are buried beneath the story of national salvation, and the objects made from them enter the palace as holy weapons. Every later miracle connected to a Millennium item carries this origin. Pegasus reads minds through the Millennium Eye. Ishizu sees possible futures through the necklace. Merrick controls people with the rod. Yugi shares his body with Atum through the puzzle. The series spends years showing the items as mysterious tools whose morality depends on the holder. The final arc reveals that their power began with a moral catastrophe. Zork emerges from that catastrophe. The slaughter opens a path to the darkness, and the evil created by the ritual takes form. Zork is described as an entity born from the darkness in human hearts. That description can sound like standard fantasy language until it is placed beside Kul Elna. Human darkness is already present before the monster arrives. It exists in the decision to sacrifice strangers, in the secrecy surrounding the ritual, and in the belief that survival gives powerful people permission to choose who will be consumed. Zork gives that darkness a body. This makes his origin more interesting than a demon simply invading Egypt from somewhere else. The kingdom creates the conditions for him while trying to save itself. Its greatest defense and greatest enemy are born from the same ceremony. The Millennium items hold the power to resist darkness, and their creation feeds the darkness enough to enter the world. Yu-Gi-Oh! Usually gives its magic a rule, and the rule here is brutally clean. Power remembers its price. One child survives Kul Elna. He grows into the thief king Bakura. Bakura is the human face of the village's revenge. He watches the royal court carry the Millennium items as treasures even though he knows what they contain. The priests see divine objects. Bakura sees the remains of his people hanging from their bodies. His anger begins with a genuine grievance. The pharaoh's kingdom destroyed his home, killed everyone around him, and built its security from their deaths. Atem did not order the massacre, and he initially knows nothing about it. Bakura has little interest in separating the young pharaoh from the system that placed him on the throne. To him, Atem inherited the palace, the priests, and the power created at Kul Elna. He also inherited the debt. Bakura's Ka Diabound grows through hatred. The spirits of Kul Elna strengthen it, and every battle allows it to absorb more power. Diabound carries the rage of people who were denied any official memory. Their suffering returns as a creature designed to attack the royal court that benefited from it. This is where revenge begins to lose its boundaries. Bakura could expose the crime. He could demand the destruction of the items or direct his anger toward Akhenaten. Instead, he pursues all 7 items and moves closer to Zork. His grievance becomes permission to destroy an entire kingdom, including people who had no part in Kul Elna. Zork takes a wound with moral force and stretches it until revenge becomes annihilation. That pattern defines nearly everyone Zork uses. Akhenaten wants his son, Priest Seto, to become pharaoh. Some of that desire comes from paternal love. He abandoned Seto and his mother when he joined the royal court, and he later watches his son rise through ability alone. Pride turns into obsession. Akhenaten convinces himself that Seto deserves the throne more than Atem, and Zork offers the power to make that belief real. The darkness rarely needs to invent a motive. It finds one that already exists and removes every limit around it. Bakura wants justice for Kul Elna, so Zork guides him toward destroying the world. Akhenaten wants greatness for Seto, so Zork turns him against his family, his pharaoh, and eventually his own son's wishes. Both men believe they are acting for something personal. Their service to Zork steadily makes the person they claim to care about less important. The villagers become fuel for Bakura's vengeance. Seto becomes an object in Akhenaten's plan. Zork's influence can be measured by the way people stop seeing the human beings inside their own cause. In the original history, the conflict reaches a point Atem cannot solve through ordinary power. Zork is summoned, the kingdom collapses into disaster, and the pharaoh uses his name as part of a final sealing ritual. He traps Zork and his own soul within the Millennium Puzzle, erasing his memories and his identity so the seal cannot easily be undone. This choice explains the mystery at the center of the entire series. When Yugi completes the puzzle, the spirit who appears has no name and no memory. He can duel, judge opponents, and use the puzzle's power, yet he cannot explain who he is. That absence once seemed like a convenient mystery designed to keep the audience curious. Zork turns it into a sacrifice. Atem's identity is missing because his name became the lock protecting the world. Part of Zork's essence survives within the Millennium Ring. In the manga's account, that fragment joins with the spirit of the Thief King and becomes the dark presence known as Yami Bakura. The anime adjusts some of these details, although it preserves the essential connection among Zork, the ring, and Bakura's ancient hatred. This redefines Bakura's role across the series. Yami Bakura spends much of Yu-Gi-Oh! Losing. He is defeated in his early game against Yugi, loses to Pegasus, loses to Yugi again during Battle City, and is crushed by Yami Merrick. He disappears for long stretches while louder villains take control of the story. None of those defeats remove him permanently. The ring finds its way back. Bakura wakes up. The spirit returns with another plan. His persistence is more important than his record. Pegasus wants the Millennium items to restore someone he loved. Merrick wants revenge on the pharaoh and freedom from the duty forced onto his family. Kaiba wants victory over Yugi. Each of them pushes the story forward through a visible desire. Yami Bakura plays a longer game. He waits for the pharaoh to collect the Egyptian gods, recover the items, and approach the truth of his past. Every step Atem takes toward freedom also brings Zork closer to release. The villain benefits from the hero's progress. That idea suits Bakura better than simply making him another tournament opponent. His apparent failures allow him to remain near Yugi without becoming the main threat too early. Even his fragile host, Ryu Bakura, gives the darkness a harmless face. The most patient evil in the series travels inside one of the gentlest people in the group. Zork and Atem also become distorted parallels. Both are ancient spirits carried into the present through Millennium items. Atem lives in the puzzle, while Zork's surviving darkness lives through the ring. Both depend on modern hosts and return to unfinished business from Egypt. Their journeys inside those hosts produce opposite results. Yugi gives Atem companionship, restraint, and a life beyond his old title. Adam begins as a mysterious judge who punishes people through games. Years with Yugi and his friends make him warmer, more trusting, and more willing to depend on others. The nameless pharaoh gains a fuller identity while sharing a body. The ring consumes Oryu's agency. Yami Bakura uses his body, hides plans from him, and repeatedly leaves him injured or unconscious. The host becomes a disguise. Zork carries ancient hatred forward without developing beyond it. One spirit reaches the past with more humanity than he had before. The other arrives carrying the same appetite that destroyed it. Their final conflict takes place in the memory world, and the form of that conflict matters. Atem enters a recreation of ancient Egypt, built from his memories. Outside the world, Yami Bakura sits across from him at a tabletop and treats the entire history as a shadow role-playing game. People in the past become pieces. The map becomes a board. The original tragedy is played again with the future attached to the result. This returns Yu-Gi-Oh! To its earliest identity. The franchise became globally famous through Duel monsters, so the final anime arc naturally includes monsters, attacks, and familiar cards. The manga began with many kinds of games. Yugi and his darker, half-faced bullies and criminals through puzzles, gambling, tabletop, role-playing, and penalty games. Bakura's first major story in the manga centers on Monster World, a role-playing game whose final enemy is called Dark Master Zork. Zork Necrophades brings that name back for the end of the series. He becomes the final boss in the most literal sense. Yami Bakura is the game master. Adam controls his own piece, and the fate of the world depends on whether the players can change an ending that has already happened. The structure also reveals how Zork sees people. Every life is a piece to move or sacrifice. Thief King Bakura can be used as an instrument of revenge. Akhenaten can be pushed toward betrayal. The priests can be killed to weaken Atem. Even history can be reduced to a board where suffering only matters when it advances the game. Yugi and his friends disrupt that control by entering the memory world themselves. Their presence is crucial because Adam originally faced Zork as a pharaoh surrounded by subjects. During the replay, he faces Zork with friends who come from outside the ancient hierarchy. Joey, Taya, Tristan, and Yugi carry no priestly rank. Their loyalty comes from shared experience, and they are willing to enter a world built from someone else's memory to bring him home. The final battle begins once the 7 Millennium items are gathered at Kul Elna and Zork is resurrected. His arrival changes the scale of the story immediately. The series has spent years calling the Egyptian gods the highest class of monster. Zork treats that reputation as a challenge. Shiman summons Exodia, the creature whose completed form ended Kaiba's first duel with Yugi in absolute fashion. Exodia restrains Zork and appears capable of matching him, yet Shimon's strength cannot last. Zork breaks through, and the man sustaining Exodia dies. Atem recovers the Millennium Puzzle and summons Sleeper, Obelisk, and Ra. This should be the winning image. Battle City was built around collecting the 3 god cards, and the pharaoh has finally returned to Egypt with all of them under his control. Zork survives their combined power and defeats them. The anime extends the resistance through Cedo, Kaiba, and the Blue Eyes White Dragons. Dragon Master Knight reaches a level of strength that would overwhelm almost any earlier enemy. Zork continues moving. The repetition makes him frightening, although it also exposes one weakness in his writing. Zork absorbs so many attacks that the battle begins to feel less like strategy and more like a queue of famous monsters waiting to lose. Exodia fails. The gods fail. Blue Eyes fails. The heroes gain very little from each attempt until the correct final answer arrives and ends everything at once. Zork works better as an idea than as a fighter. His near invulnerability communicates that Egypt cannot erase this enemy with more of the same power that created him. The Millennium items and the monsters controlled through them belong to the system born at Kul Elna. Throwing greater force at Zork repeats the old belief that enough power can bury the cost. The battle still would have benefited from clearer progress. Bakura is clever, Akhenaten is tragic, and Zork is largely a wall. He threatens, destroys, and laughs. His goal remains total darkness because a force of annihilation has nowhere interesting to go after that sentence. This limitation explains why many viewers remember Yami Bakura as the final villain more vividly than Zork. Bakura has charm, strategy, and years of history with the heroes. Zork supplies scale. Once the demon arrives, the personal conflict becomes a disaster movie. The final solution returns the battle to something personal. Yugi and the others discover the pharaoh's true name. They can see the hieroglyphs that identify him. yet reading them becomes its own challenge. Yami Bakura tries to stop Yugi from carrying the name into the memory world. While Atem fights a monster that overpowers gods, Yugi fights to deliver a word. The contrast in scale is perfect. Zork is enormous. The answer is a name. Adam spent the series known through titles and borrowed identities. He is the spirit of the puzzle, Yami Yugi, the nameless pharaoh, and Yugi's other self. Each description tells us his relationship to an object, a throne, or another person. Atem belongs to him. Names have power throughout mythology because a true name defines what something is. Yu-Gi-Oh! Makes that idea emotional. Atem recovers his name through people who know him even before they know what to call him. His friends preserve the identity he sacrificed, carry it back through the darkness, and return it when he has reached the limit of his own strength. Once Atem speaks his name, he can unite the three Egyptian gods into Horakti, the creator god of light. Horakti destroys Zork in one attack. The ending is sudden, and as a piece of battle writing, it is almost absurdly convenient. As the conclusion to Atem's identity, it lands far better. Zork was sealed through the loss of Atem's name. He is destroyed when that name is restored. The first confrontation demanded isolation. Atem gave up himself to protect everyone else. The second confrontation allows others to return what he lost. His friends make the old sacrifice unnecessary because he no longer carries the kingdom alone. Horakti also completes the long journey of the god cards. Slifer, Obelisk, and Ra spend Battle City as prizes divided among duelists. Kaiba treats them as proof of supremacy. Merrick treats Ra as inherited authority. Atem eventually gathers all three, yet possession alone cannot defeat Zork. Their highest form appears when the pharaoh has his true identity and the support required to reclaim it. The ultimate power in the series becomes unity. Three gods form one being. Two Yugis help complete one life. Friends from the present enter a memory from the past. The old pharaoh and the high school student who carried him both contribute something the other cannot provide alone. Zork's purpose becomes clearest here. He explains the cost of the Millennium items. He connects Bakura's repeated returns to the pharaoh's missing past. He gives Atem a final duty to complete before he can enter the afterlife. He also forces the series to answer whether the pharaoh has changed during his time with Yugi. He has. Ancient Atem defeats Zork by disappearing into the seal. The Atem who returns wins through a name delivered by his friends. His strength includes the relationships built during the years when he could not remember being king. This makes Zork the final enemy of the pharaoh, while Yugi remains the final opponent of the series. After Zork is gone, one task remains. Atem must pass into the afterlife, and Yugi must defeat him in the ceremonial duel to prove that both of them can move forward. Zork handles the unresolved past. Yugi handles the future. The order is important. Atem cannot leave while the darkness attached to his old sacrifice still survives. Once Zork and the spirit within the ring are defeated, the duty holding Atem in the world is finished. The final duel can focus on separation rather than another attempt to save reality. Zork therefore protects the emotional purity of the ending. He absorbs the apocalypse, the ancient conspiracy, and the supernatural debt. Yugi's duel with Atem is free to be intimate. The final opponent offers love through resistance, while the final villain has already been destroyed by the relationships that love created. There is also a harsher reading of Zork that the anime approaches without exploring fully. Atem inherits responsibility for a crime he did not commit. His father approved the creation of the Millennium items, while Akhenaten concealed the method. The young pharaoh receives a kingdom whose safety was purchased before he took the throne. He benefits from the items and uses them to defend his people. Learning about Kul Elna means learning that the authority surrounding him has blood inside it. Bakura forces that knowledge into the palace. His revenge becomes monstrous, and the series never asks the audience to excuse his desire to murder innocent people. His existence still prevents the royal side from claiming complete innocence. The villain remembers the victims whom the hero's history forgot. Zork grows inside that forgotten space. The story could have pushed this further. Atem learns the truth and opposes the destruction of his kingdom, yet there is limited time for him to reckon with what his family gained from Kul Elna. The anime places more emphasis on monster battles, additional Blue Eyes material, and the immediate race to stop Zork. The manga's horror makes the connection between the bodies of Kul Elna and the sacred items harder to ignore. Even with that limitation, Zork carries an unusually dark idea for the ending of Duel Monsters. The magical objects that powered the entire adventure were never clean. The heroes can use them for good, and their origin remains an atrocity. Good intentions in the present cannot change how they were made. Defeating Zork ends the active curse. It cannot return the 99 lives. That unresolved discomfort gives him weight beyond his dialogue. Zork is forgettable whenever he speaks like a standard destroyer of worlds. He becomes fascinating when treated as the shape taken by a hidden historical crime. His design supports that reading. He has no attractive human form and no sympathetic face. He is an enormous collection of demonic features, armored limbs, claws, horns, and a dragon emerging from his body. The design is grotesque enough to feel ancient, embarrassing enough, in one very specific area that generations of viewers have made the same joke about it. Subtlety was clearly not invited to the final battle. The ugliness still serves a purpose. Pegasus hides cruelty behind elegance. Merrick hides behind a quieter face until his darker personality emerges. Darts presents himself as a calm spiritual leader. Zork has reached a stage beyond disguise. Human motives have already been stripped away. Hunger, domination, and destruction are all that remain. That is also why giving him a detailed childhood or a complicated political belief would weaken him. The complexity belongs to the people who summon him. Akhenaten and Bakura demonstrate how pain, fear, and love can be corrupted. Zork is the destination after every restraint has been removed. His greatest weakness as a character is therefore tied to his strength as a concept. A force can complete a theme while struggling to carry several episodes of conversation and combat. Zork rarely surprises us. He escalates. He exists to make every famous power look insufficient until Adam recovers the one thing strength cannot replace: his name. Zork begins in a village whose people are stripped of their individual value. 99 lives become material. Their names disappear, and history remembers the objects created from them. He is defeated when one erased name is recovered and spoken aloud. That connection gives the finale a quiet moral center beneath all the giant monsters. Annihilation begins by treating people as interchangeable. Resistance begins when a person is remembered fully. Yugi's first wish after completing the Millennium Puzzle was for friends. He had no idea that the spirit inside it had sacrificed his identity to contain an ancient evil. By the end, those friends travel into the pharaoh's memory and restore the name that the puzzle took from him. A lonely boy's wish becomes the solution to a disaster created thousands of years earlier. Zork makes that journey visible. Without him, Adam's missing memories would remain a mystery solved mostly for curiosity. Bakura would remain a recurring villain with an impressive ability to survive defeats. The Millennium items would remain magical antiques whose darkness depended almost entirely on whoever happened to hold them. Kul Elna turns every part of that mythology into one connected story. The items were born from sacrifice. Bakura survived the sacrifice. Zork grew from its darkness. Adam sacrificed himself to stop Zork. Yugi's friendship eventually gives Atem back the self he lost. That is Zork's story and his purpose. He is the final consequence of Egypt's decision to purchase safety with lives it considered disposable. He is the ancient evil behind Bakura's patience, the burden attached to Atem's forgotten name, and the enemy that forces the pharaoh to accept help across time. As a personality, Zork will never compete with Pegasus, Kaiba, Merrick, or Yami Bakura. They can argue, manipulate, grieve, and change the mood of a scene with a look. Zork arrives after argument has failed. He is the moment accumulated darkness becomes too large to remain hidden. Yu-Gi-Oh! Defeats him with the exact things his existence tries to erase: memory, identity, and human connection. The giant demon is almost the least important part. The true horror began when 99 people were turned into 7 treasures, and everybody above ground celebrated the victory those treasures provided. Zork simply brought the bill back to the palace.